Thanks so much for being with us here on Atlanta News First Plus. You are taking a live look inside of a Clayton County courtroom right now, where the sentencing of convicted killer Hannah Payne is set to begin at any moment now. Was scheduled for 10 a.m., but court, just getting underway there. But just to kind of give you the background on this case, let me bring up some video that we have shot from the trial itself. So here is a look at what happened inside the courtroom. And here's a look at the victim, 62-year-old Kenneth Herring. So inside of that Clayton County courtroom is where the verdict came down in this murder trial, accusing Hannah Payne of tracking down and shooting this victim after he left the scene of a car accident in 2019. So again, a jury convicted her, found her guilty on all 8 counts that she was facing. That includes malice murder as count 1, felony murder, count 2, aggravated assault, another count of felony murder, count 4, false imprisonment, also count 6 was possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony, and 2 other counts of that, 3 counts of possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony. Again, Hannah Payne, 25 years old, found guilty on all 8 counts against her, including felony murder and malice murder for killing this gentleman, 62-year-old Kenneth Herring. The jury took just over 2 hours before handing down that guilty verdict, which is a remarkably fast verdict. And the sentencing now taking place at any moment now. And the incident happened in 2019. Again, the victim here, Kenneth Herring, was accused of leaving the scene of a car accident. And, during closing arguments, Payne's attorney said that his client is, quote, not a killer, and argued that the state didn't prove whose finger was on the trigger when the gun went off. He argued, quote, this is not some murderer. This is a young girl who got caught up in the wrong situation with a good heart and good intention, is what Payne's attorney has said. But the prosecution said during closing arguments, it was clear Payne was the only aggressor in this case, and she acted with malice, and she chased Herring down and pulled out her gun. The prosecution said, quote, do you know how much entitlement you have to chase somebody down, detain them, jump out of your car, and run toward a stranger? The audacity to come here and take the stand and blame everybody else. Well, on Monday this week, Payne did take the witness stand. She testified that she was trying to be a, quote, messenger for police when she approached Herring's truck while on the phone with a 911 operator, despite being told not to. And jurors also heard the 2 911 calls that Payne made during the incident. And prosecutors said Payne followed Herring after she witnessed him run a red light, hit an 18-wheeler, and drive away. Prosecutors argued that Payne ignored dispatchers who told her not to engage with Herring. As Payne approached Herring, prosecutors argued there was a struggle and she shot him. Payne's lawyer argued she acted in self-defense, though. On the witness stand, Payne testified that Herring pulled the trigger during the struggle. Now, this trial started on December 6th. The verdict came down earlier this week. Again, the jury deliberating for just over 2 hours, very quick to come to their decision that Hannah Payne is guilty on all 8 counts against her, including felony murder and malice murder. And now it is time for sentencing to take place at any moment now. Let me show you live inside this Clayton County courtroom once again, where the sentencing will take place. But by statute, the sentencing guidelines would require a minimum of life in prison. The only question is, will she get the possibility of parole or not? Will the jury then issue a sentence of life without parole? That is a possibility. But if there is a possibility of parole, and that could be on the table, it would be 30 years, according to legal experts. And so this is something that we are going to be watching for. Typically in a sentencing proceeding, victims' impact statements would be made. So we would very likely hear from the family of Kenneth Herring about the impact of his loss on their lives, on their community. And can be a very emotional time, the sentencing hearing. In some respects, perhaps more so than in the trial itself, because, there are fewer limits, I should say, on what the jury can hear, such as these victims' impact statements, which are typically not admissible during the course of the trial, the case in chief. But in the sentencing phase, we would expect to hear from the family of Kenneth Herring, and a lot of emotion clearly from them, and also on the other side as well, asking for leniency. It's common that we would hear from the defendant's family as well, to hear about the impact on their lives as well, of losing this 25-year-old and locking her away for the rest of her life, and losing her as effectively a family member for many years, and her ability to participate in being a family member, a daughter, and so forth. And you can see in the gallery there, you kind of could see some of her family sitting in the gallery. And so all of these things would be considered during the sentencing phase. But again, this is the victim here, 62-year-old Kenneth Herring, who Hannah Payne is convicted of killing. Really a very racially charged case as well. Some people have compared it to the vigilante justice taken out on Ahmaud Arbery, and wrongfully so. There have been such comparisons made, absolutely. A strong reaction from Mr. Herring's family after the verdict. Really saw it as, a piece of justice and closure. Also, strong reaction from the NAACP. Let's listen here to some of that reaction.
We're sick and tired of African Americans being unjustly hunted and killed in this state, from Ahmaud Arbery to now Kenneth Herring. It needs to stop.
And again, you hear from civil rights leaders essentially saying, that they're tired of this sort of unjustified vigilante justice, what perpetrators may consider vigilante justice, being taken out on African American men. And this was leaving the scene of an accident, was the accusation against Mr. Herring, which is a misdemeanor. And during the course of the trial, we heard evidence that Mr. Herring actually was suffering a medical episode of some sort, and so may have been very well justified in leaving the scene of this accident, which happened in 2019. And again, leaving the scene of an accident is what sparked Hannah Payne to go and follow this man. And that's what a jury has found, that she was not justified in tracking down, shooting, and killing Mr. Herring. That is what a jury decided. So again, let me show you another live look inside this Clayton County courtroom, where we will expect the sentencing of Hannah Payne to begin at any moment now. Again, Hannah Payne found guilty on all 8 counts against her, 25 years old, and expected to spend the rest of her life in prison. Her best hope would be, at this point for sentencing, the possibility of parole after 30 years. And this is by Georgia statute. Worst case scenario, no parole. Life without the possibility of parole. Because again, Hannah Payne was convicted on all 8 counts against her. That includes not just 2 counts of felony murder, but malice murder. Malice murder. So that is an intentional sort of murder, not just done during the commission of a felony, but with malice aforethought is the legal definition. And not to mention the convictions on the lesser offenses of aggravated assault, false imprisonment, possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony, found guilty on all 8 counts against her. And really a remarkable speed that the jury came up with their verdict. Just over 2 hours. I mean, that is that is about as quick as it comes for a jury to come to a decision on 8 different counts and in a murder case, no less. So we're just waiting and watching inside this Clayton County courtroom. Let me show you this live look once again for this sentencing to begin at any moment now. And this is sure to be, a very emotional time. Like I mentioned, the sentencing in many ways is more raw than the trial itself. There are fewer rules about what's admissible, what can the jury hear. And we would expect to hear from family members getting really emotional and I would assume tearful, talking about Mr. Herring and the life that was lost here. And what it would mean to them to have justice served, what justice looks like to them, to the family of Kenneth Herring. This is him, 62 years old, very racially charged crime here. This 62-year-old black man, Kenneth Herring, jury found was murdered by this now 25-year-old white woman. So certainly there is a very strong, racial element to this case, as we have heard from NAACP leaders and other civil rights groups discuss. But, it would be expected that we would hear from Hannah Payne's family as well during this sentencing, and you can see some of her family members behind her in that shot of the gallery during the trial itself. And what's on the table by statute? Life in prison. The only question really would be, is it life with the possibility of parole or life without the possibility of parole? 25 years old, and the possibility of parole would typically come after 30 years in the state of Georgia when you've got a conviction of malice murder here, which is what is the case. So 25-year-old Hannah Payne, just imagine, the best chance at this moment seems to be that she could get out of prison after 30 years at the age of 55. That would be the best case scenario for her at this moment. Now, I should add that typically after a conviction, there is an appeal. Most defense attorneys will try their hand at an appeal to see if they can get the conviction overturned. Even any part of the conviction, the defense attorney may try to argue that, okay, felony murder, we'll leave that as stands. But malice murder, which is a more serious offense, and intentional murder, it carries a higher sentence. Maybe they might try to zero in there, or at least try to get that part of that the conviction on that particular count overturned. So there are many possibilities going forward, and appeals are a lengthy process and can take years as well. This case is far from over, actually, even though a verdict has been reached and Hannah Payne has been convicted of 8 counts against her, including 2 counts of felony murder and 1 malice murder. So looking here, once again, inside this Clayton County courtroom, we are just, we've got our cameras on the seal here and just waiting for this sentencing hearing to begin. So we're just keeping our eyes on that, and we're going to, soon as that gets underway, we're going to bring up the volume and let you listen live inside the courtroom. But really remarkable that this jury found Hannah Payne, unanimously found Hannah Payne guilty on all 8 counts against her. The most serious being malice murder. in the killing of 62-year-old Kenneth Herring. Let's listen to a little bit more reaction. Of course, there was strong reaction when that verdict came down, especially from from Herring's family, the victim Herring's family, who'd been fighting so hard to seek justice some 4 years after Mr. Herring was killed. We also heard from civil rights leaders, including the NAACP. Let's listen.
We're sick and tired of African Americans being unjustly hunted and killed in this state, from Ahmaud Arbery to now Kenneth Herring. It needs to stop.
Yeah, so obviously, this case being viewed in a larger civil rights context in this backdrop of, these killings of African American men by individuals who claim to be seeking vigilante justice. And again, we are hearing parallels between this case and Ahmaud Arbery. Because again, 62-year-old Kenneth Herring, his only wrong was allegedly leaving the scene of an accident in 2019. And that is a misdemeanor, if anything, if he were even found guilty of that.
Of African Americans being unjustly hunted and killed in this state, from Ahmaud Arbery to now Kenneth Herring. It needs to stop.
And again, Kenneth Herring was alleged to have just left the scene of this accident in 2019, which is a misdemeanor if he were even found guilty of it. But his family claims that he suffered, and prosecutors claim that he was actually suffering a medical episode. So he needed to leave the scene and seek some medical attention. And so he may not have even been found guilty of any sort of misdemeanor at all. And what we had was it was a situation that resulted in him being killed, shot to death by someone who was not law enforcement, someone who was not even involved in the accident, someone who, as prosecutors said, hunted down, tracked down, and shot and killed Kenneth Herring, even though she was told by dispatchers not to. Payne, during her testimony this Monday, said that she was trying to be a, quote, messenger for police when she approached Herring's truck while on the phone with a 911 operator, again, despite being told not to. Jurors heard those 911 calls. Those 2 911 calls that Payne made during the incident. Prosecutors said Payne followed Herring after she witnessed him run a red light, hit an 18-wheeler, and drive away. And they argue Payne ignored dispatchers who told her not to engage with Herring. As Payne approached Herring, prosecutors argued there was a struggle and she shot him. Again, Payne's lawyer has argued that she actually acted in self-defense. Payne has testified that Herring pulled the trigger during the struggle. And during closing arguments, Payne's attorney said his client is, quote, not a killer, argued that the state didn't prove whose finger was on the trigger when that gun went off. Payne's defense attorney said, quote, this is not some murderer. This is a young girl who got caught up in the wrong situation with a good heart and good intention. Clearly, a jury did not buy that. They did not agree. Hannah Payne found guilty on all 8 counts against her. Prosecution saying during closing statements it was clear Payne was the only aggressor in the case. She acted with malice when she chased Herring down and pulled out her gun, saying, quote, do you know how much entitlement you have to chase somebody down, detain them, jump out of your car, and run toward a stranger? The audacity to come here and take the stand and blame everybody else. That was what the prosecution argued. That was, in their closing statement, some of the final words to the jury, who took just a little over 2 hours to find Hannah Payne guilty on all 8 counts against her, the most serious being malice murder but also 2 counts of felony murder, also aggravated assault, also false imprisonment, also possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony. And so now today is about sentencing. How much time in prison will Hannah Payne spend for her crimes? Well, by statute in the state of Georgia, because she's been convicted of malice murder, it would be life in prison. The only question here is, will she be eligible for parole? Or is it life in prison without the possibility of parole? Will she be locked up for the rest of her life, 25 years old? Best case scenario today with a conviction of malice murder might be that Hannah Payne could be eligible for parole after 25 years. Again, being 25 years old, that would be when she's 55. She may be able to get out of prison. That's what her attorneys will argue. And, you know, again, as I've said in sentencing, hearings can be very raw, more so than what we see at trial. There are fewer restrictions as to what a jury can hear, what is admissible and inadmissible as evidence to be considered. And it is typically emotional. It's typical, it's pretty normal that family members will speak and just discuss really the impact on their lives. What is the impact of their lives of losing this gentleman, 62-year-old Kenneth Herring? You know, and that clearly gets very tearful, very emotional. What is their impact on the community of losing 62-year-old Kenneth Herring? Now, on the same time, look right behind Hannah Payne in this video, and you see some of her loved ones crying behind her. And it is also quite common that we would hear from the defendant's side of the case and their family members, hearing how detrimental it would be to them to lose their loved one for the rest of her life, essentially, by, you know, behind bars. So certainly that would be considered on both sides. Just want to show you another live look here inside the Clayton County courtroom. Our camera is inside this court, waiting for that sentencing hearing to begin. And of course, we're here, we're live, even before it begins. When it does begin, we're going to bring up the sound for you. You're going to be able to listen to everything. You're going to be able to listen to the arguments for why Hannah Payne should be behind bars for the rest of her life, and the arguments for why she should be given parole. So clearly we have a crew on the ground, and if there are any moments that you miss here, we're also going to bring you live reports throughout our newscasts, our next scheduled newscast starting at noon. But yeah, if you haven't done so yet, just want to remind you, you can get alerts sent right to your phone by downloading our free Atlanta News First mobile news app as well. So we're just going to keep this up, and again, we're going to bring up the sound as soon as the sentencing hearing gets underway to determine the sentence for Hannah Payne, which would typically be life in prison, and the question would typically be, would she get the opportunity for parole? So we will be bringing you live inside this Clayton County courtroom. We will be staying live inside this Clayton County courtroom.
Pound and a half of nerds. Everybody's in the watch drum. I had too much for that. I'm sorry.
And Maria's not here.
Affected two families, two work families, a lot of people. And there are some truths that I need to express. Let me first say I've worked alongside Hannah for over 5 years. We're a small company. I would refer to her as like my work sister, although I'm probably old enough to be her mother. She is the light of our company. You can go to her to do anything. I mean, she's the jack of all trades. She's always wanted to make sure that we represented ourselves as the best company out there. And that meant making sure that she was covering for other people. If I was behind on my work and needed help and it was something that she could do, she would do it for me without even accolades for it. If there were other people in the company that were falling behind or not doing what they needed to do, she would cover for them without, our boss knowing about it. She just wanted to uplift people and make sure that the job got done. I've spent, again, over 4 years. That was a very tragic day for a lot of us. And, hearing about what happened, I couldn't believe it. And more so after, the incident happened and hearing social media and the media and how things were covered and honestly, how she was portrayed, I lost hope in people. I've been praying about things for a long time, and I want you all to know that I prayed over this building before I walked in today. I've been praying for you. I prayed for the jurors. I prayed for the prosecution attorney. I've prayed for everybody. You've been prayed for today. And I ask, that you find mercy in understanding the person that she was. She's been portrayed as a vigilante, a racist, privileged, all these things. And you can look in this courtroom, you can see all the different colors that are out here, all of God's children out here. It's like a rainbow. She didn't see color. And it's hurtful. I feel like we've just taken a big step back in society when it comes to this. And the one thing that, she always has done at work is, like I said, cover for other people, help people out. And that was protecting them, and I feel like that's exactly what was happening that day. She was trying to do the right thing. She saw something. She was, trying to make sure that she was there to bear witness an accident that she saw. We never would have thought that it would have went down like it did. I know her, and know that there's been some talk about her emotions. But like Renee just stated, she's that individual. And I'm sure that there's some of us here in this crowd right now, especially as mamas, don't always show our emotions. You know, we cover those up. We wait till we're in the shower and we cry our eyes out. We wait till we drop the kids off at school. We pull over to the side of the road and we cry our eyes out. That's what she is. She's cried with me, but she's just, everybody expresses their emotions differently. I don't know if y'all are aware, and even if it makes a difference, but, you know, talking about not seeing color, Hannah, her high school boyfriend was a black man. She carried on a long-term relationship with him. She's been involved in, you know, a relationship now with, you know, a Dominican guy. Her best friends are black. There's all different colors in her life. I just want to make sure that she's portrayed in that light, different than what it's been put out on social media, in the media. And again, that day, I feel like that she was just there to do what was right. And I know in her mind, and just like everybody in here, we could have never visualized that something like that would have occurred. And I am certainly sorry for your loss, the Herring family. And it's a loss to us as well. And I know there's a different kind of loss. I understand that. I've had a lot of loss in my life. There are a lot of people in my life that I can't call on anymore. I can't pick up the phone. And I understand that.
And according to sentencing, is there something you'd like to tell the court?
Yes. I just asked, you know, I've prayed, like I said, Your Honor, I've prayed for you. I hope you know you've been covered, that you will make the right decision. And I pray that you show mercy for her. Thank you.
Did they find a miracle out there? Right. And
My name is Victor Sneed. Can I step up?
And Trey Tucker, this is the last person.
There was one more, but I called her in.
She's not here.
Okay.
She hasn't presented herself.
Right. I was going to put him up there in place. You can raise your right hand, sir. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you give today will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
You can put your hand down, say your full name, and spell it for the court.
V-I-C-T, Victor Sneed, V-I-C-T-O-R, S-N-E-E-D.
Okay.
I'm not much of a speaker. I'm Hannah's neighbor, and I've known her since the day she moved in. And me and my wife, my grandkids, we became friends with the family. And I'm hearing that some of the things that people say about Hannah is not true. Like I say, I've known her for a long time, and I spend a lot of time outside, work with my hands. I like nature. And back in 2013, I was diagnosed with cancer. I'm from the South. I like working in gardens. I like working on cars, muscle cars. And I couldn't do anything in my garden. I couldn't do anything outside because my immune system was completely down. Out of the blue, Hannah's out there mowing my lawn. I didn't ask her to. I couldn't tend to my garden because I couldn't eat the vegetables. Hannah would go in my garden, pick the fruit, and I tell her, you know, you can just have them. You know, I didn't expect you to be over here, you know, maintaining my stuff. And a lot of times in life, we make bad decisions. We do things we can't go back and correct. When this was going on, I didn't want to watch it because I didn't want to find out the outcome. Like I say, I'm not a speaker. I did this on impulse. When they asked me, did I have anything to say? I didn't want to say anything, but it's just me. I'm the type of person, if I seen something going on, I would intervene, but then a lot of times when you intervene, the wrong things happen. Like I say, I might have said it before, sometimes you do things you're sorry before and you think about it later. And as you get older in life, you reflect on things. You can see things that are going to happen. You say, hey, you know, I wish I would have done this, or I wish I would have done that. And a lot of times you can see somebody young doing something, and you would say, hey, don't do that. Sometimes you have to let kids go, and you have to let people go fall and bump their head. And then they'll know the next time you did the wrong thing. I'm out there one night working on my car, and it wouldn't start. I had to push it to the top of my driveway. So I'm out there pushing the car. It seems like every time I take one step, I take 2 steps backwards because I'm trying to push my car uphill. Next thing I know, Hannah's out there helping me push my car. And she's like, why didn't you tell me, Mr. Victor, that you're out here pushing your car? I say, you know, I didn't think about that. And like I say, I've known Hannah since day one. I've known her family since day one. And you can see, but anyway, Hannah, she was just the type of person that she didn't mind helping you. And she didn't care what it was. Things, you know, I'm not very good on the computer. I got a race car that I was trying to program. I said, Hannah, can you help me out? She came over there. I don't know what she was doing. Maybe she was in the middle of dinner. Came over there and helped me program a car because I didn't know how to do it. And just like I say, I'm not much of a speaker. That's all I have to say.
And sir, about the sentencing on Ms. Payne, do you have anything to say about that?
I don't have anything to say about that. I know what she did was wrong, and she thought about it, she would do it again. I would hate to lose a family member, but I would like to say that the family would have some leniency against her. I know what she did was wrong, and I know a lot of times we do things, we don't make the right decisions. Everybody's guilty of that. He who is without sin cast the first stone.
Thank you, sir. And yes, sir. And this will be my arguments and statements. I believe the state.
The state goes first.
Okay.
Judge, obviously you sat through this trial and heard the entirety of the evidence in this case. This is not a jury that struggled. They never once indicated that they could not reach a decision. They barely took 2 hours to find the defendant guilty of all charges, including malice murder. The evidence was overwhelming, and the jury was very comfortable in finding that malice. I want to address one thing, and I know it's an uncomfortable thing for everybody to address, but the state and my office has never once made this case about race. Not one time. We did not ask a single question in jury selection that would be considered race baiting. We did not say anything about race throughout this trial. We just have a community that we represent that needs peace and needs healing and has needed that peace and needed that healing over and over and over again, whether it's aimed at this defendant or not. So whether or not we would be in this same place if Mr. Herring looked different, that's something only the defendant in her heart can speak to. But we have not made this case about race. But we do want this case to be about Mr. Herring and this defendant. Mr. Herring was a human worthy of saving. He had a family to go home to. And what he wanted and his wishes and his rights were fully disregarded by this defendant on May the 7th of 2019. We've talked about the witnesses, and I respect their opinion. I know they've known the defendant for a long time. But I want this court to consider what you've really heard about the real Hannah Payne. Her demeanor in this courtroom, her demeanor during her cross-examination, where she was as disrespectful as she could be, only remembered answers to her lawyer's questions. Her demeanor and who the real Hannah Payne is was heard in that 911 call, when she decided that she was smarter and righter than everyone else. She was told repeatedly, even though she's been, in my opinion, dishonest about it, she was told repeatedly and understood clearly to leave Mr. Herring alone. The real Hannah Payne is the one screaming on that call for him to get out of the car and cursing at him and striking him, as every state's witness who witnessed that incident told you about. The one who introduced a gun into a situation that had nothing to do with her, and then has continued to fail to accept any responsibility for her actions whatsoever by trying to claim that Mr. Herring shot himself, when the evidence is clear that that's not what happened, and honestly not really possible. She has yet to tell a consistent story about what happened. Every time she told the story in her interview, it changed. It was different here. It was different in the back of the patrol car, because she accepts no responsibility for her own actions. The real Hannah Payne is the one cursing, telling him to get the F out of the car. And when she gets back on the phone with 911, explaining that she shot him because he hit her Jeep. He hit her car. The real Hannah Payne is the person who said, "I'm safe, but he ain't." That's the malice that the jury heard, and what they had no problem finding beyond a reasonable doubt that was in this defendant's heart when she took the life of a big brother who gave all his siblings nicknames and made jokes with them and took care of them and put himself on the mountain to take care of his whole family. We do not believe, Judge, that this is a case where the minimum sentence is appropriate based on all of these factors. There has not yet been a tear for this victim. Her tears are for herself. You have the authority in count 1 to sentence the defendant to life without parole as requested by the family. And we would ask that you consider their request and leave the choice as to whether or not the life is with or without parole in the discretion of this court. However, on the false imprisonment, if this court does choose to give this defendant life with the possibility of parole, it is the state's request that the 10 years on that false imprisonment run consecutive on count 5. And then on count 6, you are required to give a consecutive 5-year sentence. And we would ask that it run consecutive to the false imprisonment for a sentence of life plus a consecutive 15 years. We will leave it within this court's discretion as to whether or not you think this defendant deserves a sentence of life with or without parole, but we would ask that you consider the statements made by the family in this case and the things that you have heard in this trial and the malice in this defendant's heart. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Assistant Smith. Attorney Tucker.
I'll move this over a little bit more so I can speak without the mask. Judge, that is true. When we started this case, I think you came in with a narrow approach of it, not to let the media try to guide your understanding of what was going on. Came with an open mind, open eyes, wanting to see what was going on. And throughout the course of the trial, there were inconsistencies. I mean, the state's saying it was with my client. I'm saying it was with their witnesses. I don't think we heard really anything from the witnesses that matched up with what we could conclude happened. And during that process, there were lots of things brought up and a lot of unnecessary biases added to their statements. As for disrespectful, I felt the witnesses were disrespectful. I don't think any of the witnesses gave the respect they should have to the court and to the court officers. But that's part of what happens when you're in a trial. As for Ms. Payne, I think you heard her on the stand when asked, is there anything you could go back you would change? And she kind of dropped her head and said, you know what? I wouldn't even helped out at the beginning. I would not have listened to that state officer and tried to help out. And that's a shame that somebody who has good in their heart is no longer ever going to want to help anybody because, for lack of a better saying, no good deed goes unpunished. But that was a decision she made, and a decision that, her upbringing, her standards, her values put her in that situation. And that decision is what got us here today. And that decision, according to the jury, is wrong. And just because it was a bad decision doesn't make her a bad person. It just makes her human. And we all are human. And she is young in age. And I believe the state's assessment is correct about what charges would merge with which ones. With malice murder, even though we didn't agree to disagree, I just did not hear elements that would do that, and maybe it's because I know Hannah from the 4 years we've been preparing for this. But to give her life without parole is to take a person who had good in her heart and tell her you'll never get a chance to get back out and get that good back. So we would respectfully request that the court look back at what all was said, look back at what all was done and was brought forth, and fully understand she never intended anything that day when she left from work to end up being there, to be in a struggle with Mr. Herring, to be on the side of the road, to have to pull her gun to protect herself and the gun going off. There was never any intent to have that. It was an accident. And by the grace of God, when it did, she wasn't shot by it, and it was terrible and a tragedy that Mr. Herring was. But, she is a young person who has plenty of life ahead of her. We just hope that the court would use the discretion to allow her to have some of that life to continue. The charge number 5, the false imprisonment, it does say it could be run concurrent or it could be run consecutive, but it also says it can be probated. And the 5 years for the gun can be probated. And I think the court would hopefully look into what has been said today from both sides. Unfortunately, I was not able to speak with the jurors to see what their mindset was, to find out conclusively, was it dead set because the facts were overwhelming, or was it something they discussed? So I really can't go into details of what the jury said. I just can go in what I heard and wrote down, and I saw you making numerous notes. And I would hope the court would use those notes in coming to the decision to sentence her to life with parole and allow the other two, the one charge to be run concurrent, the other one has to be consecutive. Our hands are kind of tied on that. But understand that this was all done with good intentions. And I know they say the road to hell is paved with good intentions, but she's never seen that road. She's never seen what happens out there in car accidents and arguments and walking up on cars in Clayton County. And to sentence somebody to life without parole for being naive or trying to do something with the goodness of her heart, I think is a little bit harsher than what is necessary in this case. And I would just put it to the court to use the facts that they've heard and the direction that is given to them by the law and the compassion that we know is in your heart, and allow her to have parole and have an opportunity to show that it was just a bad decision. She's just human. Decisions can be changed by the way people handle adversity, which is what she's going to be dealing with here, and give her a chance to show that she does have good in her heart and that she does know certain things you can't do. And no matter if it feels right to do it, you just can't do it. And I don't think she'll ever step up to help again. And that's a tragedy in itself, not to the magnitude of losing a loved one. But if the court could take that in consideration of her age, the facts, the compassion, and sentence her to life with parole and have the other charge run concurrent and probate that gun charge, I think it would allow her time to reflect, to fully understand that things happen and it can be found to be wrong, but it's how you handle yourself through that adversity to get through it and come back and show the true you is what allows us to keep hope in our heart and allows us to keep going. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Attorney Tucker. From the state,
I believe in this hearing, the defense is entitled to the last word.
okay, the court having heard from the witnesses and from the attorneys, I am required to take a short recess to consider, which is what I'm going to do at this time, and I will return with respect to what my sentence will be. Thank you. Okay. This court has sat through the trial, has heard arguments of defense and the state, has listened to the witnesses today, and after considering all of those things, the court will impose sentence as follows. Please stand, Ms. Payne. With respect to count 1, malice murder, the court will impose a sentence of life with a possibility of parole. With respect to count 2, felony murder, that will merge into count 1 and is dismissed as a matter of law. With respect to count 3, aggravated assault, that merges into counts 1 and 2. With respect to count 4, felony murder, that merges into count 1 and it is dismissed as a matter of law. With respect to count 5, the false imprisonment verdict, the court imposes a sentence of 8 years consecutive. With respect to count 6, possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony, the court imposes a sentence of 5 years that will run consecutive to the underlying sentence. Count 7 and 8 will merge into count 6. So the court's total sentence is life with a possibility of parole plus 8 years consecutive on the false imprisonment and 5 years consecutive on the possession of firearm during the commission of a felony. And that is the court's sentence. So I'll remand you again, Ms. Payne, into the custody of the Sheriff's Department. Before I do have some instructions for you, Ms. Payne. You have a right to seek post-judgment relief from your conviction of the crimes, either by making a motion for a new trial in this court and or filing an appeal to a higher appellate court. If you want to file a motion for new trial or an appeal, then you will need to file the said motion or a notice of appeal with the clerk of Superior Court of this county within 30 days. You may want to more fully discuss this with your attorney. If a motion for new trial is made and the court denies it, you will have 30 days from the filing of this order of denial in which to file with the clerk of court your notice of appeal. You have a right to have an attorney represent you on the motion for new trial and the first level of direct appellate review. And if you cannot afford to hire an attorney, the court will provide you an attorney and a transcript of your trial at no cost. In addition, usually you have a period of 4 years from the date of your sentence, which is today, before in this court becomes final to file a habeas corpus petition. The details that can affect the time within which you must file this petition are contained in the copy of this code subsection, and I'm going to ask the deputies to hand that to you. And so you have 4 years from today's date to file a habeas corpus petition. Councils, I can confer with you as to set in a date for the hearing for a motion for new trial, but we can do that once we're adjourned. Okay. Deputy, could you have that?
I just have one question after Ms. Payne.
Yes.
I noticed you said 8 and 5. Are any of those additional charges or any of that going to be probated?
I believe I was very clear, Attorney Tucker, that they're consecutive.
So it's consecutive to serve.
The life with the possibility of parole. Okay. Anything further from the state?
Nothing further from the state, Judge.
Anything further from defense
Nothing
counsel?
further from the defense.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Payne, you may go with the deputies at this time. With respect to this matter, the court stands adjourned at this time.